over $100,000 in part-time referral commissions last year. What's up? What's up? Nick Loper here. Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, because your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. Today, I'm joined by a longtime Side Hustle Show listener who reached out with a unique side hustle, what is essentially a part-time local lead generation website. Link Moser runs nhfinehomes.com, which features high-end luxury, like lakefront, waterfront, New Hampshire real estate. And so how it works in a nutshell is prospective buyers find the site, usually through Google or through SEO. And when they reach out for more information, Link can either work with them himself as a real estate agent, or what happens more often is, okay, I'm going to pass that lead along to one of my referral partners in exchange for a percentage of the agent's commission if and when that prospect eventually buys a house. Link, welcome to the Side Hustle Show.
Thanks, Nick. I'm excited to be here.
Me as well, because we're going to be looking at through this model, this local lead generation website model, through the lens of real estate, but really could be applied across a variety of niches, especially ones with high customer acquisition costs or where the value of a new customer is worth a lot. It's just a twist on the affiliate marketing model that we're probably all familiar with, except instead of sending people to Amazon for a 4% commission on a $30 to $50 product, we're sending people to real estate agents for a 0.05 to 0.07% commission on a $1 million product. And it adds up to be quite a bit more. But you've been at this for a while at NH Fine Homes. If you were starting over, if you had to come up with an ancillary niche or something, like, where do you get your gears turning, or what might make an appealing market to try and enter for somebody just starting out?
Looking at that through that lens, high dollar worth transactions where you can put the effort into to create some lead that has value. If it's not residential real estate, you could stay along those lines with commercial real estate, certainly high ticket transactions there. Business sales is another one that actually does not require licensure, as far as I know, in most locations. So, there are organizations out there looking to buy businesses, and there are success fees that are easily six figures just for making a warm introduction of someone who you may know who may be looking to sell a business. And that's one I have not looked into yet, but if I was starting over, that's a place I think I'd look to see, because there's a lot of capital on the sidelines looking for small businesses. And
Yeah.
beyond that, I think you look in the consumer segment. I mean, there aren't many transactions that are going to be much larger than business acquisitions or real estate. You could go downstream, and I think there are some elective healthcare things, and these are not things I know a lot about, but things like plastic surgery, I think, have certainly some things in the home service sectors, certainly some types of landscaping. Some of those
Yeah.
projects can have pretty big dollar values, so I think I'd go where the money is.
Right. Roofing, solar panel installs, kitchen remodels, like some higher
Yep.
ticket items.
Yep.
The business sales one is really interesting, because there have been niche brokerages that have popped up. Some like in the Amazon FBA space specifically come to mind. But if you could build the resource, we just had Jono on a couple of weeks ago talking about his laundromat purchase. It's like, okay, could you build, not just like the generic business brokerage or website that consolidates all these listings, but like, oh, we're going to specialize in one little niche. I just want to snipe off this one segment and aggregate these, pull all these together. Like, if you want to buy a laundromat, we're your go-to source. And then you send off these referral leads to the eventual broker there. I think that's a really interesting one.
It is. I think, and it sort of just that came up as you asked the question, but I think there's opportunity there for people, especially if someone has some familiarity with a particular niche or an interest in it within that segment. The riches are in the niches, as they say, right?
Yeah, and it's somewhat data driven, and we'll talk about how you're pulling data from the MLS and not necessarily having to create a ton of unique, topical content on whatever it is. But it couldn't hurt to do that. On the real estate side, kind of like I think you alluded to, a license would be required, which may be seen as a hurdle to some, a barrier to entry, a competitive advantage to others.
Mm-hmm.
But can you speak to what that might look like if somebody wants to follow your footsteps and say, okay, I could create the niche, real estate thing for, something in my area.
So each state has some different variations in the rules. Today, the testing is still two tests, multiple choice. Certainly not the hardest test that any human has ever taken by any means. And there, most states have an education requirement, but it's a matter of, at least here in New Hampshire, 40 hours that you can do online now. Um, and it's quite economical. For
Okay.
$500 or so, you can get the schooling done, take the test, and if you pass the first time, you've got a real estate license. So it's also a license that is pretty economical to hang on to. So again, here the costs are around $1,000 a year. So it lends itself very well to a side hustle or a part-time gig, and that's kind of how it's always been for me. I've never considered myself a full-time real estate agent. Um, by having that license, it's allowed me, just as you said, to participate in referral fees, as well as practice real estate. So you've got both those levers to pull on.
Yeah.
If you have the time, you can practice traditional real estate with buyers or sellers. But where this came for me was sort of life got busy and some other interests I have, as well as family. And you could take a lead, you could go out, and because it's a commission driven industry and the pay is all on the backside, you can have some wild goose chases. So as I got older, my time became a more valuable commodity, and I also learned that there are, we know what we know, and there's certainly some areas where I get leads that I did not know, and so I was not the best person to go and um, take a prospective buyer to a lake that I didn't have knowledge of. So
Yeah.
I started referring these out to other people who did have that knowledge, and when those, occasionally a check would come in, 6 months later, oh hey, we sold the Smiths a house on the lake. It was, wow, geez, all I had to do was send an email.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
that's
that's
all I
kind
can.
of where I think, oh, that's a better, if you look at your hourly rate for just forwarding a lead, they may not all pan out, but you haven't lost the hours and the drive time that could happen if you were actually trying to work it.
Right. And what's interesting, a couple things. It sounds like this is a well established practice in real estate. Like there's an understanding amongst both parties. Like, hey, we're happy to pay for leads because it's kind of on a performance basis. If we don't close the
Yep.
deal, nobody's getting paid anyway. So it's like,
Yeah, and typically it's we can't price fix numbers, but 25% is pretty common in the industry for a referral fee. So if I send you a prospect, you close a piece of business, you agree on that number prior to doing that, but that's
yeah.
that's pretty typical, I think, what people do. Now it can be above, it can be lower, but I think that's a good rule of thumb to work with.
Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to call out was in the age of Zillow and Redfin and these like big aggregator sites that are trying to be everything to everyone real estate wise, saying like, no, there's still an opportunity for a smaller site to come in and carve out a little niche. And you've done this with New Hampshire lakefront, waterfront properties, which definitely got my gears turning. I'm like, well, we got some lakes near here. We got some, vacation style home, maybe some like mountain second home cabin type of real estate. And it kind of like, oh, okay. Even though, yes, of course, this data is going to be on Zillow, it is going to be on Redfin, but it could also be here and be by being maybe more apparent, more perceived, targeted, maybe that attracts some people in the search results versus somebody looking for these larger sites.
I think it does. And I think for me, I was able to optimize the content around very, very niche keywords. And in our case, there's a couple hundred lakes and ponds in New Hampshire. So creating landing pages specific to those water bodies, and getting that granular and the long tail search where the big guys were not doing that or were not able to
Yeah.
on that level. And I think the other aspect is you can improve your UI and the search mechanism, because you're right that the same property will show up across hundreds of sites. So you've got to build a better mousetrap by which maybe it's easier to search, or maybe there's some other features there. I mean, it's the same content, but people will use different websites based on the user interface alone. And if you can create a better user experience, for the longest time, Zillow did not have a way to search for waterfront homes. They do now, but I think it's still because they're doing it on a national level and real estate is so local.
Right.
Our multiple listing service covers New Hampshire and Vermont, so there are location specific fields that are not going to exist in Alabama or Utah, more than likely. And so especially around things like waterfront, which again may not be something in a more arid location, they may
Okay.
have other fields that we don't have. So if you are able to build a search interface using that, an example is as well here is that we have, because it's in the New England and things get cold and freeze, we have seasonal properties as well as year round. So a seasonal property is, think of it as 3 season, typically does not have insulation or heat, or people get running water out of the water body, so they may not have a well, so you
Okay.
don't have, so if someone is looking to use it as a ski home and be there in January, they want specifically year-round homes. So that's another function that you can create a search around.
Okay, by being, yeah, just a little bit more targeted, a little more niche down,
Yep.
and showcase that local area expertise. You kind of, can climb the ranks that way and attract some visitors and hopefully some buyer referrals in that sense. Do you, and specifically targeting, it sounds like, second homes, luxury homes, like that may be the niche to play in. I mean, maybe like even a local subdivision, there might be an opportunity there if it's, if it's super targeted and there's enough
Hmm.
search volume around it. I just don't know if there would be enough volume, because I looked at like Snoqualmie Pass real estate, which is kind of like the local ski mountain for us, about 40 minutes east of here. According to Hrefs, a couple hundred people are searching for this a month. Like, is that enough to like start to think about building a site around?
That's a good question, and I don't know. My initial thinking is it may not be, unless there is some additional long tail to build. Now, I guess if you're coming up number one for that and you're capturing a lion's share of that type of volume, maybe. you, the SEO is just going to get them to your front door. It's going to be your website that's going to have a sticky enough feature that's going to keep them there.
Yeah.
These are very long sales cycles, and in this case, secondary homes are obviously discretionary, motion-driven purchases. Nobody needs a second home, and so I think there's a lot of browsing that happens in that, and we're all, as a nation, browsing real estate as a pastime for
Yeah. A
many.
lot of window shopping for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly doing that myself, and so I think you've got to have the SEO will get them there, but you've got to have some other stickiness to keep them there. And again, I think that comes down to content, which is king in so many niches. Is that if you think that there is enough content there and no one else has done that, then that may be a play.
Yeah.
But then where do you go from there, right? I mean, if you were to, we have a dozen ski mountains and areas, and because real estate, now here's the neat thing: you can be licensed in one particular state, but you can participate and share referral fees across state lines without having a license in a different state. However, you may not be able to get the listing data in a market that
Uh,
you are not licensed. So for me to build a site around New England ski mountains, I can get everything from New Hampshire, but unless I have a license in Vermont and Maine, and um, you know
okay.
that, which is not an insurmountable task. It's just the paperwork of it all, and just doing. There's some data fees that come with that, um, but
Is it
I
a
guess the,
thing,
the
or
point
would it
is
be?
you could build a niche outside of where you live. I mean, it is not impossible.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity to be background or silent partner to an agent who already has a presence there, or
Yes.
even
Yep.
or already is like somewhat localized, just to say like I don't want to jump through the hoops of doing this education and taking this test, but I do like this idea, and if I could somehow do it in an above board way without doing the licensing requirement, maybe underneath somebody else, like I'm an intern, or I don't know how you'd set it up,
You
and
you'd probably need the license in order, because you can't get a referral fee if you're unlicensed.
Okay.
So you probably should have the license that this gets you in the club, so to speak. But if you don't have any interest in going out in the field, get your license locally and then build that lead capture website with a partner in a market that you're in. And I can't imagine some real estate agent wouldn't say, hey, I'd be totally open to, here's our arrangement. If you are the one investing and generating the leads and all I've got to do is work and close these and share it comes to you, that's a win-win for them. Basically build a website maybe in their name, but you own it
Yeah.
and, control the property. That way, if it didn't work out with that person, you could just rotate it into another partner in that area.
Yeah,
People,
that's similar to the rank and rent episode
it
that we did,
is. Yep.
where it was kind of like
Yep.
we're going to make a generic sounding, uh, North Dallas carpet cleaning.com or
Hmm.
something, whatever it is. And
Yep.
just we're kind of agnostic of who those leads go to. Ideally we have, one primary referral partner who is paying us monthly to maintain the site and send them the referral business. But if for whatever reason they start to have crappy customer service, they go out of business, they get okay, you just swap out for the next guy on the list. And it sounds like similar here. The other, and it was a keyword difficulty of 1 for Snoqualmie Pass real estate. It's like, oh shoot, worst case, you spin up this website, it doesn't sound like it'd be tremendously difficult to rank for that. The other one that came up was Suncadia, which is kind of this resort community east of the mountains. So it's like, dry, better weather, it's kind of in the Cascade rain shadow. And so that had 800 search volume and a traffic potential was a lot higher. It was 3,000, 3,400 visits a month. And so that started to get a little bit more interesting, slightly more difficult, but still like in the green according to
Yeah.
Ahrefs.
Yeah. That it doesn't take too many if the dollar values and the average sales prices are up there. Um, last year I sent a lead to a real estate agent who closed a $7.2 million lake home here in New
Wow.
Hampshire, and um, his commission check was a nominal commission check, and I believe I had negotiated 30% of that, and so that was I don't remember exactly, but it was over $50,000 for a referral check
For one lead.
for one lead, and I've since sent additional leads because once you find someone that can close and makes good on the referral, you're more than happy to feed that person whatever leads you get.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen every day, but boy, it more than makes up for your efforts to build that and maintain it.
Totally.
And if you're relying on organic traffic, your costs aren't that high. So yeah, there'll be some upfront, but to your point, in a small niche like that, if the price values are up there, which I'm guessing they probably are, it wouldn't take 1 or 2 a year. Certainly makes for a good little chunk of change.
Yeah, no kidding. Kind of definitely it gets you excited about putting in the upfront work to form these relationships and go through all these hoops for that carrot at the end, the reward at the end. Is it common? This is kind of like chicken versus the egg thing to negotiate these referral deals. Like, do you have somebody in mind? Well, who, if I don't want to do this myself, like if I don't want to be actively practicing real estate, or if we're going down the business brokerage route or the roofing leads route, like does it make sense to have that ultimate referral partner in mind and kind of pre-negotiate your deal structure with them first?
I think it does. Yes. I mean, I think when you know that when you've got a lead there, it's dying on the vine and getting cold the moment it hits your inbox. So
Yeah,
that's not the best time to be going and trying to find someone to place that with. And that we've I'm sure lost some over the years by trying to find a home for them. So I think having those conversations in place, talking to people about what you're looking to do, recognizing that you may not have a lead for them for 6 to 12 months, but staying in touch, doing your homework. And I think the biggest thing is finding someone who has the integrity. I mean, it's common to have a written agreement that supports this, and most real estate agents work under a broker. So it might be a good idea to at least have a conversation with that supervising broker as well, just to keep things on the up and up, so that not from an integrity standpoint, but just because they're the ones who ultimately write the check. So I had a situation where a broker knew me and knew that I had referred some business to one of his agents, and he said, I don't think this person ever paid you a referral fee. And I'd referred it out, and I didn't have the best system for keeping track of that at the
Yeah.
time, and I had forgotten about it. And so he mentioned the name of the person that the client, and I luckily did have a good CRM, so I went back and I could find the email thread, and I said, "Yep, that came from us." So this guy went ahead and paid that referral out of his company dollar. Very above board guy, high integrity. I wish I could say that was the norm, but I don't know that it is. For him, that was a year or so later. So he could have never mentioned that, and I probably would have never thought about it.
Yeah.
And that
Is
that
there
was
any
12 or
best
fifteen thousand
practices?
dollars. So I think it wasn't an insignificant amount. So um,
Once you hand it off, though, like, it's very much this honor system
it
of,
is the
like,
honor system. Yeah,
did that deal ever close? Do you have a system to say, like, 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later, I'm following up to see, like, what the status is?
I have relied on the honor system, and I'm sure I've given away some money. So I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed to sort of say I don't have a system for that. Um, I do feel that if somebody has paid out a don't bite the hand that feeds you. So once somebody has proven that they will pay out in a referral, anything in that area is going that direction for now. So they're going to buy my loyalty
Yeah. Yeah.
that way. Doesn't mean that holds the case forever, but it's going to depend on the volume. If you've got a lot of leads flowing around, it's harder to track all of that. I suppose I could take the name of the person I referred and try to go and track that down somewhere, or ask the broker. But at the end of the day, time is money, I guess. So I'm just kind of going on that recommendation, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to really building the relationship, the human relationship with that partner. Does that person have experience? Are they in it full time? Reading the reviews online, talking to their broker, getting just your gut sense of, is this person a person of integrity? Recognize there'll be some slippage. You may lose some, or somebody
Sure.
may, what happens if that lead converts 2 or 3 years later? Does that still count? I
Yeah.
would say
We have
yes,
we
but
have a statute of limitations on this
yeah,
thing.
no, there shouldn't be. But some agents, but what happens if that person then decides they want a bigger house and sells it a year later? Well, that was still your lead, but at that point, do you get something? Do you get nothing?
Yeah, lifetime arrangement, and you'll
Yeah,
see
there's
that
no
in
rules,
affiliate
but you
programs too,
you
where
just
it's
you
like
just want to,
30-day
yeah,
cookie, 60-day cookie, something like that.
correct. You get a second bite of the apple at a discounted rate. I mean, that's the stuff you should all come to terms with, and it's not hard to do. It's just have it in writing. Make sure the supervising broker or office manager is in the loop, because that person can be another level of integrity and another set of eyes to see, oh, hey, this transaction passed through. Did this one come from Link? Oh, yeah, it did. Well, we've got to get them refer. I mean,
Yeah.
it
And you
just,
still have the customer's information because they reached out to you first. So you could always follow up
correct.
on that end to be like, hey, did
Yep,
you end
you
up finding
can.
that house you were looking for?
And that customer information, that for me, that can be a proof of, initial contact. Yes. Yeah. Here's an email thread from last week with me and Mr. Smith, showing that we had a quick conversation before I passed them over to Nick.
Yeah.
So there's certainly ways, and a good CRM system can be, you can try to create a CRM system where that referral partner logs in and somehow maybe has some of the conversation there, or communicates within your referral interface if you wanted to. That may
Yeah.
get a little technical, but another solution is, if you are part of a large brokerage, you may refer that to someone else within your company, especially if they're in your market, and now you're both under the same roof. So that makes it a little easier to see internal data around transactions, and certainly to be able to lean on the supervising broker.
Gotcha.
Um,
All right. Well, you've got me excited about this model because traditionally, website based businesses, whether you're selling affiliate products or you're relying on ad revenue, it's very much a volume game. How do I get more traffic? And it sometimes, would take a ton of traffic to make that happen. And, one of the examples that comes to mind was Saw L, who was running this insurance based website, and he was making in my mind, what seemed like a ton of money for not a lot of traffic because of the high value of insurance of referral leads, but it was like an insanely competitive niche. And so when I look at some of the keyword difficulty metrics for some of these primary keywords, that's where it's like, oh, okay, doesn't not super competitive, doesn't take a lot of traffic because it's such high dollar amount, where it's like, okay, this could be interesting even if only 100 people stop by every month, but if they're super targeted, then it still makes a lot of sense. Talk to me about the SEO process here of what kind of content that you're putting on the site, how you're pulling in the different data, like how are you competing against the Redfins and Zillows of the world?
My strategy was to build this thing custom because I thought there's a lot of SaaS models out there. And my feeling was that they all shared the same code base. They all shared more or less the same URL structure. And so that there was going to be similarities with that. So I built something custom and would invest my time in it. And as far as the SEO, it was a lot of on-page SEO. And so really looking at, because your content primarily is your listing data, which is content that is in other places of the internet. So you had to leverage the data that was there to create your best to create some unique keywords and to just get that on-page experience as dialed in as you can. And of course, those metrics are always changing. Um, in, Last year, I invested some in link building to build that, and I actually would use Ahrefs to go and mine keyword data of other competitors to see if there's keywords that I don't have landing pages for,
Okay.
and build those landing pages. And that the strategy works fine. And it didn't take a ton of content, certainly not anything what we would call long form content. So people want to see houses, they don't want to read my blurb on a particular lake. So demographical data I would add in there, maybe some links to outbound links to local attractions or things, because again, if this was for vacation home buyers, they weren't as interested in schools or other things that a primary home buyer would be. This was more about how close am I to restaurants, or how large is this water body, how deep is it, do they allow
Okay.
power boats? Those are the
Sure.
questions that would come up typically. um,
And some of these category specific pages are like this, this specific lake home is like, it's only a couple hundred words of content, if that, at the
yep.
top. And it's that kind of stuff that you described, like, a little bit about the area, population, lake, rules, nearby attractions. It's not, 3,000 words of, the Wikipedia entry about this lake.
I would have these landing pages for lakes and ponds or water body landing pages, and then I would have internal links back to town and city pages. So every lake would be in one or more towns, and so you were thinking through the mind of someone who's not local to this area. They're coming here, they want to know, where is this water body in relation to wherever they're coming from. And in our case, a lot of it is from Massachusetts, the greater Boston region, even
Okay.
Connecticut, New York. How far is it from home? And again, how big is this lake compared to other lakes? And what's there to do on there? Are there places where I can dock up and go get lunch? And most of our lakes are small where that doesn't happen. But is there enough room to go boating? Water skiing. So these are the questions that came up that you would want to include on those landing pages to answer those questions.
Yeah. What worked for you on the proactive link building front?
So I hired a third party company because link building is crazy and tedious. And I hired a company that did this on a flat fee per link basis based on the domain rating. So these guys did a great job, and I would build landing pages and we would create some content, and then they would link to that. Certainly I leveraged the blog as well. So there was times to perhaps write some longer form content and then link back to some of the pages. So that almost became sort of like pillar content in that case. But 6-7 months, we started to build organic traffic, and what I learned from that was I was building traffic for lower value keywords. So I was getting the traffic and I was getting some leads, but these leads were like cabin in the woods,
Oh,
which
interesting.
there wasn't a lot of inventory for it, but these were people that were searching for, you know, lower price point homes. Now, a good agent is going to take any referrals that you're going to send them, large or small, because they're thinking, again, looking long term at that relationship. And
Yeah.
you just never know where a lower price point may have a friend that has a higher price. I mean, you just never know. So a good agent should be looking at the relationships they're building and treating all leads equal. But the reality is that's not always the case, because you're asking them to share part of that commission back as a referral. So it's just less pie to go around.
Yeah.
So I was finding that I was getting some of these, and they were more further off and harder to place. So, um, it was an outcome I hadn't expected, because sometimes we get, at least I got focused on, wow, yippee, I'm getting more backlinks. My traffic is growing. I'm, 50% year over year, but the type of traffic I'm getting and the keywords that I was ranking for were skewing away from the larger lakes, the more luxury, higher price point keywords. So there
Right.
was almost a little bit of sacrifice going on, I think, there. And to the point where I actually reverted back to the previous version of the website, which had been generating more likes. Now, it's tough because market changes and conditions and things, you really never quite know if it's you or if it's the market or what's going on. And of course, your competitors are, there are going to be some out there
Yeah. They're
that
not
are,
standing still
they're
either.
not standing still. And
Do you ever play around with paid traffic at all, or all organic?
all organic. You know, I I know that paid can work, and there are models and people that do that. Um, but I just never went there. I think you've got to have, when you're going to go play with paid, you've got to have your landing pages dialed in and your offers, and you need to have a good mousetrap. Um, and I think I think paid may work better when you are converting those leads and working that entire transaction, because you're getting more of the pie then.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
if
know if
somebody
paid.
wants to buy a $7 million home, I might, pay a few bucks to Google to get in front of that lead.
I would, I would, but those people are far and few between, and
Yes.
in most markets, maybe Southern California, but
Yeah.
um, and it's very hard to predict. I mean, it's very hard to not like e-commerce where you can track that sale right through the checkout.
Yeah.
Um, the lead times can be long, and so I don't know if PPC works that well, and it's certainly diminishing returns too, because the Zillows and Redfins of the world are using PPC,
Yeah.
and I just I think it's a race to the bottom for little guys.
Are there any tools or technology that you swear by, either website platform, or to pull in the listing data, that either starting over, that I would use today because the site's been around for a while? You mentioned, hey, it's custom, but just curious if there are, if somebody is looking to start this today, if there were a handful of tools in your tool belt that would come in handy.
I'm a big fan of WordPress, like so many, for the platform, and I used an IDX plugin called Showcase IDX. I looked around at several others, and you could build this stuff. You could hire somebody, a freelancer, to build it all for you, but I'd gone that the first route, and it was expensive, and there were holes in it. So I think if you can find a better mousetrap, Showcase IDX I think charges either $60 or $100 a month, and they have all that data there for you. And another nice thing with that is if you were to expand into other markets, if they already have a footprint there, it's pretty easy to roll in. If you happen to be on the border of one state and need to be in two markets, that's another option. I found their interface aesthetically worked well. I found that and this is certainly not a plug to them any means, but um, it was easy to work with, and I could build landing pages because, again,
Okay.
most of us aren't super technical. So I knew WordPress, and I wanted to be able to create landing pages pretty easily. So it worked well for that.
Okay. And then that also helps the listings come down if they get sold, if they're inactive, right? Because that's like,
Yep,
well,
that's all automatic. They take care of all that through the plugin. And the thing that I liked about that one was that all that listing data lived on your domain name too. So sometimes there's solutions out there where all that essentially most of your content will be sitting on a third party URL, which doesn't give you any SEO value.
Right.
So that really cut the pool down quite a bit, because you needed to have that data living on your domain so it could get indexed.
And so typical, conversion flow or visitor flow would be somebody looks for, homes on such and such lake, or, such and such lake real estate. And they find your page, they scroll through the listings, say, hey, this one looks interesting. I think you got all the pictures that have been pulled in through this feed. And then they hit the contact button, they call you. What's typical, win from, a cold visitor to warm lead?
Capturing the organic lead, I think, is challenge number one. I had tried in the earlier years with some forced registration. So, you could browse the website for free. After so many views, you had to put your name and email address in. And that was, that was 10 years ago. And at the time, that was not an uncommon practice. But I think now, the internet has changed, where I was more of the belief, as I think others are, just make that data available. The plugin did allow for that functionality. It also allowed that you could hold back some premium content, some demographical data, because you're trying to take that raw traffic and convert
It,
that to you know identifiable lead. And if you were really aggressive, you could then call or email that person. But most people don't want to hear from us that early on in their search. So if you're able to get a lead, I just let it organically go. A real good warm lead is when somebody filled out a form that says, "Hey, I'd like to see 123 Main Street, this Saturday." So we called that a showing request. So that was someone that was raising their hand, wanted to see a specific property in real life, that
yeah.
was further along in the buy cycle. So at that point, you had that decision to make of, did you want to follow up and work that lead yourself, or just pass that lead right on to a referral partner and let them run with it.
And that's usually
Uh,
through the contact form or on every
correct.
product detail page. There's a,
Yep.
click here to contact us, or something.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I was going to ask if there's any broader email capture website. The money is in the list. Everybody's like, yeah, you got to grow your email list. Is there like the, lead magnet of, the seven deadly sins to avoid when buying a lakefront home, or like, is there like a higher, top of the funnel lead magnet for site visitors?
There could be, and I haven't taken it that far yet. Um, but certainly you could create lead capture, behind a funnel or something of that nature. Top 10 tips for buying waterfront in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Certainly could. And, one thing I haven't tried is retargeting. I mean, because this is a long sales cycle and you're getting, a lot of traffic just from looking, you can certainly, that's a form of paid traffic or paid ads that I think might have some merit, especially if you had some sort of offer um, like that. I think those are great ideas. I just haven't tried that yet.
Yeah, what would be a compelling offer for somebody? I mean, we've seen the sign that it must be purely designed to get people to take a picture and share it on social media. Is like free pizza when you buy a house, and you're like, well, I don't feel like these are necessarily in alignment. Like this thing costs $10 versus this $500,000 purchase. It is just, but you notice it and you talk about it, and you share. So like trying to think, well, what would be that compelling offer that people would talk about and share. But I just was curious about that, top of the funnel email capture. I like this retargeting idea because, yeah, long sales cycle. Okay, just getting back in front of people who may still be in the market, especially as seasonality changes. I imagine there's a lot of seasonality. I'm not really looking for vacation homes in the middle of winter, or just as market conditions change too. And we kind of alluded to that. Well,
Yep.
the market is not what it was in 2020 and 2021, so it's kind of almost setting yourself up now, trying to build the foundations for when real estate rebounds.
Yes. Yep.
So heading into the new year, what's next for you? Any big projects, initiatives, plans that's got you excited?
I have been focused more so in marketing, and kind of pivoting to my other side at hustle, or kind of the more main focus lately has been around digital marketing and consulting. So I am I'm looking at trying to move upstream in that to position myself kind of as a consultant. It's an interesting time to see where the economy's headed and what the future's bringing in. I think I try to be the optimist, right? That there's always opportunity out there. It's just trying to read the tea leaves a little, where that is, and just in talking today, it brings me back to that idea of the business acquisition aspect of it. I've done a little bit of M&A with some small client rosters from other web companies that retire,
Yeah.
and when you get out and you meet people and you talk to people, you find opportunities where, hey, maybe I can play matchmaker here. And it's the same thing in real estate. You've got someone that wants to buy something and somebody wants to sell something, and there's an opportunity in the middle there. So that's something that I need to put on the to-do list to explore a little more here, between now and the first of the year, when there's some downtime. Uh,
Absolutely. No, that's you definitely got my gears turning on different niches, different areas where the same general model could be applied to. Who is actively looking to grow their business and they're hungry and they're aggressive and they're paying for leads, and how do you kind of help them achieve that goal? And by creating these websites with super low competition in a lot of cases,
mhm.
to go out and establish that credibility and authority and get that done, which you've done an awesome job of at nhfinehomes.com. You can check the link out over there. Let's wrap this thing up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation.
Don't look at failure as a bad word. I think that's part of the growth. I don't know if I learned that early enough in life, because I look back at fearing taking chances on things, and as holding me back. So I think jump in the pool. If you don't have a side hustle, you're at the perfect time of year to start thinking about that. With the new year coming up, get that list of New Year's resolutions out. Get your ducks in a row over the holidays, and hit January 1st running. I don't know where the future will take all of us, but I think life's a contact sport, and it's far better on the field than it is from the sidelines.
It's more fun when you get in the game. I'm with you on that front. Just a couple of things. I took a ton of notes during this call, but like targeting these higher end homes, if you're going to go the real estate route, targeting these higher ticket services or other, just where there's a lot of money, a small percentage can be a significant side hustle income. So it makes a lot of sense. Doing that keyword research up front, trying to see, well, where is there enough volume and low enough competition where it makes sense to go through the effort to build up that site, try and establish some credibility and authority. If you like this style, I've got a couple episode recommendations for you in the archives. One that just came to mind was John Doherty, who runs Credo. I think it was Get Credo, an SEO referral service. John um, was kind of doing SEO consulting as a side hustle, ended up, having to turn away leads, and thought, well, wait a minute, there's lots of other friends that I trust in this industry. Would they be willing to pay me for a qualified referral? Sure enough, they would be. And so he built up this kind of referral network. We called it high touch affiliate marketing in that episode. That's 273. If you scroll back in the archives, hopefully the archives go back far enough, able to find that one, 273. That's a good conversation. And then we kind of mentioned the rank and rent model. This was Luke Vanderveer in episode 448. Really interesting model where he built up this whole portfolio of highly localized sites targeting very local services, and basically charging companies rent for them. These companies that were trying to grow their business, they were established, they were reputable, but were looking for incremental business. And hey, I'm happy to help you get that set up and charge a monthly fee for that. Sometimes, $500, $1,000 a month. You can see how it doesn't take too many in the portfolio to start to build a pretty significant side hustle income on that. So again, Link, really appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for sharing your insight. Thanks to FreshBooks for sponsoring this week. You can get your bookkeeping out of the shoebox and into the cloud with the help of the number one invoicing and accounting solution for freelancers and service providers everywhere. Just hit up freshbooks.com/side hustle to get 90% off your FreshBooks subscription for the first 4 months. That is it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're finding value in the show, the greatest compliment is to share it with a friend. Until next time, let's go out there and make something happen. And I'll catch you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show. Hustle on.